friends, I'm Jack Watson, UI UX designer, illustrator, animator, connoisseur of donuts, and I'll be your host for today's Illustrator Marketing Challenge. We're going to be focusing on pattern making today and applying those patterns to products you might see used in surface design. Before we get started, be sure to check the links in the description below this video. We've got links to other challenges, our creative cloud communities on Discord, as well as a link to download your free resources to create along with us today, which includes the file I'll be working with. You're definitely going to want to download our file today for those mock-ups I made for you. You can feel free to use those as you wish on future projects as well. Alright, let's switch over to Illustrator to take a look. Alright, so here we go. We've got some notes off to the side, mostly about what surface design is, as well as about art licensing, which kind of go hand in hand. Surface design is any pattern or design that you can apply to printable products. Art licensing is when you, the creative, license that work, your patterns and your kind of surface designs, to a company or manufacturer to print your designs on their products. So you create printable designs, they license that work to print those designs on their products. It's a great way to earn passive income as a creative, but the first step is getting your work out there. So I've got a few artboards to get you started today with some mock-ups. We've got a little like trifold of fabric, we've got a little paper swatch, and we've got some, I'm calling this washi tape, but it could be any kind of tape you want, I guess. But we've done past challenges and how you can make these mock-ups. These are all made in Illustrator, they're all vectors, so yeah, it should be easy to apply our patterns. So I'm going to show you a way that's a little bit different today for making a pattern. In the past, you have probably seen you can just kind of make artwork on the artboard directly, and then you can add it to your swatches panel over here and it will make a pattern for you. If that's your preferred way of making patterns, feel free to go ahead and do that. But if you've had trouble with that method in the past, we're going to do something a little bit different. So instead of making any artwork on the artboard, I'm going to go up to Object, drop down to Pattern, and hit Make. And when I do that, it's going to tell me that it's already added this swatch over here in my swatches panel, so that whenever I make anything and I'm done and I hit save this, it's going to just throw it on over there for me. So that's all this is kind of telling you. And it's also going to make a little blue square. It's going to place this kind of arbitrarily on your artboards, wherever you're kind of zoomed in or looking at on your screen. It's not really important where it places it because it's not actually going to put any artwork on our main artboards. This is a special, like, you can think of it like an isolation mode where anything that you do in here is only going to be applied to your patterns. It's not going to affect, it's not going to show up on our artboards when we're done. So, and these blue lines here are indicating the boundaries of our patterns. This is kind of like our little artboard, our little pattern area. Anything that we make in here is going to be kind of like duplicated, you'll see in a second, across this screen, so we can get like a little preview. For the time being, I'm going to leave these pattern options alone. This window will pop up and it's got a whole bunch of options that we're going to take a look at in a minute, but for now I just want to get started so we can kind of see what this mode does. So I've been focusing on spring. It's spring here. Let's do another like little spring pattern. You could do little flowers. If you wanted to utilize some of the elements that you used from making your garden blueprint, feel free to pull those in and you can use those to assemble your different patterns as well. But I'm going to make a little bee pattern because I love the bees and they work well for our garden, right? So I'm going to switch over in the shape tools. If you don't see the ellipse tool, you just have to hold down on whichever one of these shapes you see and open up this little submenu, and then I'm going to drop down to the ellipse. And I'm not going to draw a perfect circle out today, I'm just going to kind of drag and create an oval shape to create the bee body. Starting out with our base, working large to small. And you can see when I drag out a shape that it's already repeating across my design. I'm not sure what's going on over here. Let's clear that. There we go. If you click over here, it'll reset your default fill and stroke. I might have had like one of these pattern swatches selected. Anyways, when I drag out a shape, it's gonna tile this according to our settings here. So we've got 5 by 5 currently. You can see down here in the copies. We can change that, bring it up, bring it down, whenever we want to kind of set this to your personal preference. These are just demonstrating how it's going to copy. And if the background, having them kind of tiled like this is distracting or it's hard for you to tell what you're working on, You can also dim these copies. So we can decrease the transparency. It's not going to decrease the transparency on our main pattern tile. It's just going to make those previews, those copies that are showing us how the pattern is kind of tiling, it's going to make them a little bit less distracting. So I'm going to just bring that up for the time being. All right, so we've got the body of our bee, right? You can see I've got smart guides on. I always highly recommend them under view. Smart guides, they're checked on right now. You can check them on and off as you wish, as you're kind of working, whether you want to have things snapping or not. Or you can see the shortcut for them here is going to be Command and U for smart guides. All right, so let's go over here and let's start to add some color. Bees are yellow. Lots of sunny yellows going on today, this week, I should say. So double clicking into my swatch here, I just double clicked on the fill color, which is in the front. It's going to pull up my color picker. And I can use this little hue slider to just bring it down into the more yellows, warm tones down here. And then across in this color picker, if you didn't know this, across the top, moving from left to right is going to increase the saturation. So left to right is actually saturation, and then top to bottom is actually value, so darks and lights. So if you ever were curious as to how this is kind of constructed, that's what we're working with, darks and lights, and the hue at the top, the intensity of the color. All right, we're going to hit OK, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click to bring the swatch to, or the swatch, the stroke color to the front, and I'm going to adjust this. It's fine if you want to keep black if you'd prefer that, but I like to work with kind of like colors instead of pure black, like dark colors, because I think it just kind of softens the appearance, kind of blends it with the rest of my artwork. And if you're joining us over on the live stream on YouTube, the Adobe Live YouTube, or on Behance, we are live every day at 9:30 a.m. Pacific. Be sure to say hi. Let me know what kind of patterns you want to make. It looks like somebody over there is having a little bit of trouble viewing. Let me know in the chat if you all can see me. I want to make sure. All right, so, and say hi. I'm going to change the color here, like I said, to a color instead of being pure black. So for now, I'm just going to pick something that works with the color of my fill. So I've got a yellow fill. I can just kind of bring my color again, sliding over the hue adjuster down into the yellows and then bringing it down into a kind of darker yellow to kind of make it complementary here. Actually, let's bring it a little bit more. There we go, a little bit more orange. Then I'll hit OK, and I'm going to increase the line weight of this a little bit. So over in my stroke panel, either clicking to bring the stroke panel up here or in the control bar at the top, I'll just use the up arrows to increase the line weight a little bit. When we're working with things that are small like this, keeping it really simple and using like bold lines are going to help your pattern stand out, especially at small sizes. So you want to be kind of considerate of how your pattern is going to be displayed on products. If you're working with too small of details or too small of line work, it kind of gets muddy or a little bit lost. So just kind of something to be aware of. All right, let's add a little stripe to our bee. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to grab the rectangle tool. And with the rectangle tool, I'm just going to drag a shape using smart guides, lining up with the left and dragging across until I get that little snapping magenta indicator on the right that it is the same width as my circle. I want my stripe to be the same kind of darker yellow gold color, so I'm going to switch the fill and stroke by clicking these arrows, and it's going to bring my darker color to the back. And then I don't actually want a stroke color on this anymore. I just want it to be the dark color, so I'm going to set that to be none. And this is a pretty good stroke, like this is a pretty good stripe on our bee. But we could make this a little bit more fun by having it follow the shape of the bee. So bees are really round, right? So their bodies would kind of like cause that line to bend. So it looks like it's kind of bending around our round bee. And we can do that really easily by going up and using an effect. So we're going to go to the effects panel, and down here you've got some warp effects. You can pick a couple of these. Any one that you pick, it's going to kind of open up a menu. So I'm just going to pick Arch, which is the one I want. But you can see in here when I open up this menu, you get a preview icon next to each of these that kind of shows what that's gonna do when you're you have it selected. You could use maybe a bulge. I would not recommend the arch or the arc. The arc is gonna distort the sides out. And I actually don't want the sides to be pushed out because it's going to be too far past the edges of my bee. And so I find that using the arch, which keeps the lines straight on the two sides, it doesn't distort those, is a little bit better, in my opinion, for this kind of task. But it's totally fine. You can kind of pick whichever one you want. And then I'm going to bend it. I don't want to bend it too much. If I go down, it's going to bend it sort of downwards. If I go up into the positive values, it's going to bend it up. It's really a kind of a personal preference type of a thing. You can pick horizontal or vertical. I want to bend it along that horizontal axis, so I have that selected. We're going to hit OK. Now, you may notice that we've got a little bit of extension on the outer sides here. If you are bothered by that, you can kind of like try to scale it in a little bit to hide it, but you can also go up to Object and Expand Appearance. That will take your effect, or your warp in this case, and it'll expand it out to be just shapes. And then we can select our background bee body, hit Command-C to copy, Command-F to paste in front. And then with that selected, I'm going to hold down Shift to also click to select my stripe in the foreground. And then I like to use the Pathfinder for this. I'm just going to open up the Pathfinder window, which you can find in your windows down here. Make sure you've got it checked open. And I'm going to choose this option here, which is Intersect, which means that it's going to create the intersection of those two shapes. So it's going to say the outside and the inside and just leave what's in between. So when I do that, it's going to leave just the in-between shape, which happens to be the stripe. All right, moving right along, let's add the thorax on our bee. The thorax is like kind of like the in-between. You can think of it like our torso, or like the in-between between the body and the head. I'm going to do that by grabbing a rectangle. And we're just going to drag out a rectangle that's kind of smaller than our current bee shape, body shape, and kind of like more of a square shape. And I'm just using Smart Guides to kind of line it up. And if you want to adjust the scale, you can kind of pull the sides in, whatever you kind of want it to look like, bring it up. I like having it slightly overlap the body, so it looks like those two pieces are connected. And now to kind of match the roundness of the body, I'm going to use live corners. When I hover over the corner, it's going to give me that round live corner indicator, and I can just pull these in and round them out. So now we have like a little torso part here for our bee. I'm actually going to scale it up a little bit. I'll click on the top here, and holding down Shift, I'll scale it to constrain it. So it feels a little bit more in proportion. Okay, so we've got our torso, we've got our body, we've got our stripe. Let's add some little eyes. So I'm going to hold down and grab the ellipse tool again. Dragging and holding Shift will let me create a kind of perfect circle here for our eye. And we can drag it kind of over the face here, or the thorax. And I'm kind of imagining, if you've ever seen those like really fluffy bumblebees, like their head kind of ends up being tucked under their torso when you're viewing them from the top. And so I'm imagining that that's kind of what's happening here. The eyes and the head are kind of tucked under that part. So now that I've got one, I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift to drag out a copy. Alt and Shift at the same time. Alt or Option, depending if you're on Mac or PC, and drag out a second eye. And now we're going to add kind of the final touch here. We're going to add a little antenna to the top. So I'm going to switch to the pen tool, and we're going to do a little bit of pen tool work today, kind of clicking in the middle to where, using Smart Guides, I can see where my point is going to start on the top of my head. So I'm going to click there, and it's going to create a point, and as I drag out, you're going to get this little sort of cyan indicator that's showing you where your next point is going to land. I'm going to click it, I'm going to drag to kind of curve that line a little bit. And the direction that I drag is actually going to be the direction that my line curves or is headed. So you can think of it as like an arrow pointing your line across. Then I'm going to click to make one more point. I'm going to switch the fill and stroke so that our dark color is applied to our stroke instead of being a fill, so we get a nice line. I'm going to use the selection tool to just kind of drag to select everything we've got so far and bring it down a little bit so that it doesn't get cut off on the top of our pattern board there. And then I'm going to just make another line or another antenna by clicking with the pen tool. I don't want these to be perfect today. I think that it adds a little bit of personality to our bee if they aren't perfectly symmetrical, to kind of have them be a little bit more fun. And then if you're working with the pen tool, by the way, and you created this line, you want to start a new one, if you hit escape, it'll actually like deselect that line. So as you're working and you want to start a new line, just hit escape. I'm just going to drag to select both of these and move them down a little bit, since that one is getting not quite attached to the head of our bee. Alright, the last component that we need to add in order to make our bee look like a bee is we need to add a wing. So we're going to go back over here again, always starting with simple shapes, and grab our rectangle tool. I'm just going to drag out a long rectangle to create kind of the long base of our wing. Going back over here to switch our fill and stroke again. I'm going to switch to the direct selection tool this time. This lets me select individual points instead of the whole path or the whole object. And I'm going to kind of start to sculpt away what I want the wing to look like. So as the wing gets closer to the the thorax, I'm going to click on this lower left point and just drag it up. If you have a hard time keeping it straight as you're dragging up, just hold down shift, and then no matter where I drag, it's going to keep it kind of nice and straight. So we'll make it a little bit smaller there. And then the bottom point, clicking on the lower right, this one needs to be a little bit wider. So you can already kind of see the wing shape that we're developing here. And then selecting the entire shape, I can go in and, let's bring it over a little bit. Actually, I was not getting the points there, so I'm going to switch to the direct selection tool. If that happens, you can just switch, and you want to see these little live corners again. And I'm going to drag those in to start to round out my wing. Now, we've had a little bit of a problem here because, as you can see, the tension on the left side is preventing the points on the right side from rounding anymore. So if you want to solve that, and I want to round these out a little bit more, with the direct selection tool, the white arrow, I'm going to drag, and I'm just going to select the back points over here on the right, and that will let me drag these in to make those rounder. Alright, I'm going to double click to change the fill color with the color picker. I'm going to pick a nice complementary color for this. You could go with white, but that would be really difficult to see your wing, so adding a touch of color here is going to help keep your wing visible. So a nice complementary kind of purple color will look really nice with the yellows in our bee. If you need help picking colors, I do have a link to color.adobe.com if you want to kind of browse the trends or the explore to get some nice spring color palettes. You can even search by spring if you'd like. But that looks good to me, so we're going to hit OK to make our little wing, and then when the wing is over the body, it'll have a little bit of transparency. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to go to opacity, or you can grab it in the transparency window. But up here in the control bar, I can drop the opacity, clicking on this little arrow and just kind of sliding it down. 60% looks pretty good to me, get a little bit of transparency, and now we're just going to rotate it into place. I'm going to hover over the corner with my selection tool to get that little rotate indicator, and I can just kind of freeform rotate it if I want. If I want something more precise, I'm going to hold down shift, and that'll let me constrain and rotate it in 45-degree increments. So 45 degrees, I'm going to select and just kind of pull it over our thorax here. I think it needs to be a little bit bigger, so I'm going to drag the corner down at the bottom, holding shift to drag it and keep it constrained. Now we need to make our other wing, and there's a really easy way to do that by going up to Object, Transform, and we're going to use Reflect. When we do that, it's going to pull up this little window. We can choose if we want it to reflect along the horizontal or vertical axis. In this case, we want it to be along that vertical to get that flip, and then this is the most important part. Make sure you hit copy. If you hit OK, it's just going to make a, take that original shape and flip it. We don't want to do that. We want to go to Object, Transform, Reflect, and choose Copy. Now I can just slide it over. I can hold down Shift if I need help keeping it straight. And now we've got our little bee friend. Move him over a little bit. Looking cute. Alright, now let's get into some pattern options. Over here on the side, you can do a lot of fun things in this window. Down here, we're not gonna get into all of it. We've got these overlaps here. You can change if you want the pattern to overlap with the original shape in front, or you want the copies to overlap in front. The first thing that I want to go over is probably the thing that gets people the most confused, which is this size tile to art. When I turn that on, anything that I do in here, it's going to change the size of this blue bounding box, which is containing my pattern, to fit the new art size. So if I like to turn this on if I want something that's got like a really tight spacing, but if you wanted to add additional kind of space out here, just check this off, and then you can increase or decrease to get a little bit more space between your pattern tiles. So we're going to turn it back on again for the time being. And if you go in here, there's also a drop down, and this is really cool, and I don't think a lot of people know about this or use this very much. You can change your tile type to be brick by row or brick by column, all kinds of different options that are very similar to how the grid repeat works. You can kind of change the arrangement. I think it's nice it gives the pattern a little bit more of an organic feel, not so repetitive. So I would highly recommend you kind of explore these different options here. In here. I think this one will be really cool. I really want to play with this one because obviously we have a bee, so this hex by column, it kind of adds a little bit of that organic stacking, but also we can add a little honeycomb in the background, right? We can use this hexagon tile here and have some fun with it. So I'm going to switch over to the shape tool and grab the polygon tool, and as I drag it out, you can see it's going to make a nice polygon shape for us, and I can increase or decrease the number of sides by clicking with the up and down arrows on my keyboard. Once I get to 6 sides, which is what I want for a hexagon, I'm going to actually release the up and down arrows. I've still got my mouse held down. My mouse is held down the entire time, and I'm going to switch to holding down Shift to constrain it. Okay. So now we've got our hexagon, remembering that we've got size tile to arc turned on, so I'm going to want to kind of move this to be centered with my bee using smart guides, and I can scale it up a little bit if I want, holding down Shift and Option or Alt to scale from center. Let's add a little bit of a fill color to this as well, so I'm going to double click on my fill, and I'm going to drag down to a nice, oh, it's all the way down to my dark, nice light yellow. Okay, you can see that's covering up my bee. We can fix that in a second. I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to right click and go to Arrange and Send to Back to put it behind my bee. That option is also up here, Object Arrange, Send to Back. All right, now this is looking great. I think we're ready to start seeing how this looks on our different products for our surface design. If you hit save a copy, it's going to make a copy of the pattern. So if you're working with an existing pattern and you wanted to change something and you wanted to make a new copy, like we wanted this bee pattern, we had it made already and we wanted to change the colors, save a copy is going to duplicate it. Hitting done is obviously going to save our current pattern. It's going to overwrite what exists currently, and hitting cancel will undo everything. Don't hit cancel. All right, so we're going to hit done. And it's going to tell us that we've got some, maybe we've got some effects or something in here. It's not a big deal, it's just giving us a warning, and we're going to hit OK. And don't worry, you might panic that your pattern is gone. It's not gone, it's just gone over to our swatches. Remember, we created it in that swatch, we didn't create anything on the artboard. And for the first artboard here, we want to preview what our pattern looks like. So I'm going to switch to a rectangle. You can use any shape here. I just want to kind of test out what it's going to look like. I'm going to bring my stroke to the front, set none, switch back to my fill, and I can just click on my new pattern, and there you go. It sees what our little bee looks like. If you wanted to scale this up a little bit, we could go to Object, Transform, and Scale. And you're going to want to make sure you've got Transform Objects turned off. When you've got Transform Objects turned off, you're only scaling the pattern, so we can scale it kind of up and down just like that. Okay, let's see what this looks like. I'm going to pull out my layers panel because I want to show you how this is all constructed. When you open up these little arrows with the by clicking on them in your layers panel, you're going to see I've got everything kind of named for you. As we go through here, you can even open up these little tape groups as well, and anywhere that it says pattern goes here, if we click on that, that's where you're going to apply your pattern to test how it looks. So I'm going to click on that pattern goes here, and I'm just going to click on my swatch, and it's going to apply that pattern to my mockups. Most mockups are kind of constructed this way, where you have like some kind of pattern or artwork goes here to kind of indicate to you that you need to kind of put it there. But for the sake of time, I've actually gone ahead and made all of these the same fill color. So if I select pattern goes here, and I go to select same fill color, I can actually apply the pattern to all of them at once, just like that. So it's very easy to kind of see what everything looks like on these mock-ups. And like I said, you could feel free to make more patterns. I would maybe do 2 or 3 so you can see how they look on different products, kind of stacked and next to each other. Do like a whole spring theme. Once you're ready to share these for some feedback, you're going to go to Export, Export for Screens. You can see I've got everything kind of named out for you. You're just going to hit Export Artboard, a PNG, or a JPEG. And then you're going to hop over to the Illustrator Discord. We've got the Daily Creative Challenge area. DCC Feedback is the channel. And if you scroll up, you can see everybody's been sharing their beautiful gardens with us. I love these little tomatoes that were created. You can just drag these files right into Discord and say, here's my surface designs. Hit send, and it will post in the Discord for everybody to see and provide you some lovely feedback from the community. Check out what everybody's working on. Again, those links are in the description of the video if you want to go and check them out and join our Discord. Alright, so that's going to be it for me for today. Thank you for joining for a marketing challenge in Illustrator. We talked about surface design, we went over pattern editing tools to create a little bee design. We're live every day at every day at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time at behance.net/Adobe Live and on YouTube. But stay here. There's more awesome live streams coming up after me. I think we have the video challenges next, but I will see you all later. Bye, everyone.